Discover 3 sinister tales of sinister forests where terrifying secrets were uncovered. Rachel had always been a hard-working single mother, but something deep within her told her Maple Hollow held a secret, a danger lurking in the Whispering Pines forest. The townsfolk whispered of families gone missing, swallowed by darkness that crept beneath the ancient trees. Tales of bone-chilling encounters sent shivers down her spine, but the thought of a weekend hike with Ellie and Max was a distraction she desperately craved. Each weekend, they sought solace in the soft green embrace of the forest, far from bills, jobs, and disdainful looks. But these trips weren't just escapes. They were threads woven into a fragile fabric of normalcy. With the towering pines whispering their secrets, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. It started as an innocuous prickle on the back of her neck, a fleeting sensation that made her pause. Driftwood and age-old stone paths appeared benign until a creeping chill settled in her bones, a subtle reminder that the forest was much older than her worries. The locals' furtive glances chilled her more than Maple Hollow's biting winter air. What had happened to those families? Each day, as she juggled her 2 grueling jobs, she found herself consumed by the echoes of their tragedy. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she steered Ellie and Max deeper into the woods that weekend, something sinister called to her, an inner voice urging her to go beyond the familiar trails. Just a little further, she said, her own unease masked by the allure of adventure. The trees thickened, shadows lengthening and swirling, creating a maze-like disposition. Then they stumbled upon a cabin, decaying and overgrown, cloaked in the forest's embrace. The air turned thick as fear wrapped around them. Inside was a tomb of memories, dust-laden photographs of smiling families frozen in time, eyes that seemed to follow her. She felt a constricting presence, one that tightened around her throat as brittle newspapers chronicled the eerie history of disappearances. Tales of trust and betrayal buried beneath Maple Hollow's placid surface. Her heart raced, pounding in her ears. Each rustle of leaves felt like an ominous whisper urging her to leave. Paranoia prickled her skin, telling her they were not alone. As twilight descended, the forest shifted, revealing its true nature. Shadows danced menacingly, creating sinister figures amongst the trees. Her instinct screamed with dread. Rachel's children clung to her side, their faces pale, reflecting her own turmoil. The forest felt alive, a predator lurking. She imagined the faces of those lost, ordinary smiles now blanketed with a chilling void of disappearance. Her mind reeled with the alarming thought that terror wore familiar masks, smiles of neighbors brushed with danger. There came footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing with intention. They resonated just beyond the trees, each step sending tendrils of icy fear crawling up her spine. The stories whispered around town now loomed large, alive. Would she and her children join the forgotten families, lost in the forest's grip? As Rachel grasped her children tightly, dread mingled with heart-stopping anticipation, realizing that they stood at the precipice of an ancient malevolence. Would they escape this night? Or would they become another chapter in the Whispering Pines' dark tale? The chilling whisper of the wind outside the cabin seemed to beckon her, pulling Rachel's attention from the oppressive air that weighed on her chest. She felt frozen, caught between the sacred memories of those lost, a mournful chorus crying for recognition, and the sheer panic clawing at her insides. The footsteps grew louder, a rhythmic thud that matched her heart. A shiver ran down her spine, and she turned, determined to confront whatever threat lay outside. "Stay behind me," she whispered, her voice trembling. Ellie and Max flinched, their tiny bodies pressed against her. The moment felt electric, charged with the horror of everything they'd unearthed. For the first time, she recognized that it wasn't the forest they had stumbled into. It was a trap, a predator ready to pounce. "Mommy!" Max's voice quaked, piercing through the thick veil of fear. She turned to him, seeing the stark terror in his wide eyes. She held her breath. No words could capture the weight of this moment. Then the door creaked, almost invitingly. Slowly, she backed towards it, her heart hammering against her ribs like a warning drum. Ellie squeezed her hand, fidgeting but resolute. They'd come this far. Fleeing felt impossible now. but facing whatever horror waited beyond could end in tragedy. "I need to know who's there," Rachel shouted, her voice shaky, but she tried to sound authoritative. The footsteps paused, and a chill settled in the air, layering silence heavier than the evening mist. She could make out indistinct shapes shifting, twisting in the darkness just outside the cabin, but nothing materialized. Then a figure emerged, tall, gaunt. It stepped into the thin light filtering from the cabin's dusty windows. The pale features of the stranger glowed ghostly in the fading daylight, eyes sunken but gleaming with a frantic energy. Rachel's stomach churned. This stranger could only belong to the lost. "What do you want?" her voice faltered.
The figure didn't respond. Instead, it turned slowly, craning its neck to survey the surrounding forest, raising arms that stretched unnaturally long. Something was deeply wrong with the way it moved. Suddenly, an icy wind swept through the cabin, slamming the door behind her. Max shrieked. Ellie gasped. The stranger remained motionless, eyes darting from the cabin to the woods, as if listening to secrets carried by the breeze. Rachel felt a surge of reflexive survival kick in. She couldn't linger. They had to escape. "Run!" she shouted, but as she turned to usher her children away, the figure let out a gravelly whisper. "You shouldn't have come." The words were layered with an echo that sent bolts of ice down her back. Rachel barely had a moment to gather herself as they stumbled back through the decaying door. The forest closed in, trees looming like watchful giants, their branches swaying ominously above. The darkness thickened, chasing them as they ran. Glancing back, Rachel caught a glimpse of the figure now standing at the doorway, its mouth moving but no sound escaping, as if the night itself swallowed its voice. Panic bubbled within her, a fierce desire to protect her children surging. Each step felt heavier, the ground seeming to pulse with malice beneath her feet. Shadows twisted, reaching out, blurring her vision, and as they plunged deeper into the woods, she heard the chilling laughter of something unseen, echoing through the pine trees. Would they find an escape route, or fall victim to whatever lay ahead in the unforgiving dark? The unearthed stories were far from finished. They were merely beginning to unfold. And then she noticed Ellie was lagging behind. Her small face turned pale as terror danced in her eyes. Rachel reached out, her heart racing, but just as her hand was about to clasp Ellie's, something pulled her daughter back, a force from the shadows, dragging Ellie into the abyss of the whispering pines. "Ellie!" Rachel screamed, desperation flooding her veins. In that heart-stopping moment, Rachel realized they were no longer just trespassers. They were prey. The forest had awakened, and it had plans for them. The chase had only just begun. Rachel's feet pounded against the earth, a frantic rhythm accompanying the wild thumping of her heart. She felt the pull of Ellie's hand slip away, and it tore through her like icy steel. "Ellie!" she screamed again, her voice cracking as she spun around. The shadows shifted, swirling like a dark tide. It felt alive. "Mommy!" Ellie's voice echoed back, muffled and distant, buried beneath layers of thick, creeping dread. The woods felt saturated with something more than just fear. It felt like anticipation. "No!" Rachel gasped as she sprinted toward where she last saw her daughter. She stumbled over roots, branches snagging her clothes. The tree trunks, twisted and gnarled, looked like black fingers reaching out towards her, mocking her panic. The laughter from the darkness intensified, vibrating through her bones. She heard it again, that gravelly whisper, but this time it carried something sinister. "She belongs to us." "No!" Rachel shouted defiantly, the words a raw shout of desperation. She had to reach Ellie. She couldn't lose her, wouldn't allow it. The trees were closing in, their canopy choking off the last of the light. Panic clawed at her throat. As she pushed on, she glimpsed shadows darting just beyond her sight, glimmering eyes flashing in the darkness. She stumbled into a clearing, barely illuminated by what little moonlight peeked through the clouds. "Ellie!" Rachel called again, scanning the oppressive expanse. Thick fog rolled in, twisting around her legs, thick like a living entity intent on dragging her down. The air felt charged, electric with unseen eyes watching. And then she saw her. Ellie stood at the edge of the clearing, entranced, unmoving. The haze coiled around her like a lover's embrace, hiding the danger just a breath away. "Ellie, come here!" Rachel's voice rasped, laced with urgency. She couldn't bear the distance. Every part of her screamed to reach out to gather her child back into safety, but Ellie didn't respond. Instead, her small body seemed to lean into the darkness, almost welcoming its cold touch. Behind Ellie, shapes began to coalesce, rising through the mist like specters of nightmares long buried. They had no faces, no bodies, just shadows that twisted, beckoning Ellie closer. "No!" The breath steeped Rachel's lips, a cry of determination. "Ellie, no!" Rachel lunged forward, tearing through the fog. The atmosphere thickened, weighty with despair. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown, each step a gamble against an unseen force. Max's scared little whimpers echoed by her side, pressing against her like a tiny anchor in this storm of terror. The shadows shifted, forming a path towards Ellie. They hummed with a dreadful song, a melody filled with foreboding that crawled beneath Rachel's skin. The chilling call grew louder, and in that moment, she realized the whispers had transformed. They weren't just mutterings of the lost, they were seductive promises of power, secrets that drew you in. But Rachel wouldn't be swayed. She dove, arms outstretched, ready to snatch her daughter from the jaws of the coming night. As she reached Ellie, she felt an unseen force push against her, a wall of icy breath that sent her crashing backward. She landed hard, gasping as the fog enveloped her, pulling her back like some malevolent hand. She looked up just in time to see Ellie taking a step deeper into the darkness, the shadows embracing her with monstrous intent. "Ellie, no!" Rachel screamed, each word a raw plea leaving her throat. In response, Ellie's head jerked back, her face twisted in an expression that was not her own, something ancient and dark shimmering behind her eyes.
Suddenly there was silence, a suffocating stillness that pressed down on Rachel. Ellie's mouth opened, a smile too wide, revealing teeth too sharp. "You'll never leave." Rachel felt her heart freeze. The darkness around her tightened into a suffocating grip. Something sinister pulsed in the air, and all she could think was, how long before it took them all? "Max!" she shouted, but her son's tiny frame faded into the shadows, lost amongst the growing chorus of disembodied laughter. The hunt was far from over, and in that moment, Rachel understood. To survive, they would need to confront the darkness, or else risk sharing their fates with it forever. But the question hung heavy in the chilling mist. Could they escape the predator that watched, ever hungry, from within the forest? As the shadows moved closer, she knew every moment counted. The clock was ticking, and the only way out lay deeper within the terror around them. Rachel fought back the rising panic, her heart racing as she pushed herself off the damp ground. She needed to act fast. The shadows loomed like ravenous beasts, and Ellie was caught in their spell, her body rigid, a perfect target for their sinister hunger. "Ellie, please," Rachel pleaded, her voice breaking. "Fight it! Come back to me!" But Ellie only stared ahead, her wide eyes glinting unnaturally in the dark. The forest whispered in harmony with the laughter that swirled around them, twisting the very air Rachel breathed. Each laugh seemed like a taunt, each rustle in the underbrush a reminder of how close danger was. Suddenly, Max whimpered beside her. The sound dragged Rachel's focus back to him, her precious boy trembling at her side. She grabbed his hand, squeezing tight. "We have to go, now." Panic surged through her, sharp and prickly. She had to get them both to safety, had to break the hold this nightmare had over Ellie. Rachel turned, ready to pull Max into the depths of the clearing, but the shadows shifted again, gathering in front of her like dark smoke, blocking any escape. "Stop!" Rachel shouted, her voice rising in defiance. The shadows seemed to pause, hesitant. She took a step forward, heart pounding. "Let her go!" The laughter dulled for a heartbeat, and in that silence, a voice coiled from the depths of the void, silky and taunting. "She wants to stay, Rachel. Why would she leave? Would you deny her belonging?" Rachel's stomach twisted. The words felt like ice, numbing the edges of her resolve. In that moment, Ellie turned towards her, a fleeting flicker of clarity in her eyes, a glimpse of the daughter Rachel knew. "Mommy!" Ellie cried, panic radiating from her voice. "Yes, baby, this way," Rachel called, desperately tugging at Max to move toward her. But just as they began to retreat, a form surged through the shadows, massive and looming, an embodiment of the darkness that writhed around them. It moved fluidly like a predator sizing up its prey. Fear seeped into Rachel's bones.
She could almost taste it, sharp and metallic. "Max, run!" she urged, shoving him forward. But the little boy was frozen in place, his eyes wide with terror. "Go!" she shouted again, then pivoted to face the shadow figure, her heart hammering with defiance. "You can't have them! I swear I'll fight you!" The shadow loomed closer. "You can't fight fate, Rachel. You came here, and now you must stay." "Ellie!" Rachel cried again, hope seeping through her. The little girl's expression flickered, wavering as if she could hear her mother. "Mommy, I'm scared." Rachel had to reach her. She stepped forward, against the oppressive weight of the void. "I love you, Ellie! That darkness isn't you! Come back to me!" For a second, Ellie looked more like herself, words teetering on the edge of her lips, struggling to break the spell that held her still. But then the shadows surged, tightening their grip, and Ellie's face twisted again, becoming something unrecognizable. "Mommy, help me." The dark laughter erupted around them, louder, victorious. Rachel's heart shattered at the sound. She couldn't give up, not now. She turned to Max, who was still paralyzed by fear. "Max, we're leaving!" she snapped, her voice steely. She grabbed his arm and began pulling him deeper into the fog, away from the writhing shadows and the haunting echo of her daughter's fading voice. But the forest was alive, and it thrashed against her, branches snapping at her heels like skeletal hands. The fog surged around her, thickening into an impenetrable wall. She could feel the weight of unseen eyes, the sensation of something trailing behind, hungry. And just as she thought they were breaking through, a deafening shriek shattered the air, a mixture of her daughter's voice and the forest's dark roar. Rachel and Max froze, fear rooting them in place. The shadows receded slightly, revealing glimpses of haunting figures twisted in agony, specters of those who'd been lost before. Their eyes were hollow, their mouths twisted in an endless scream. Behind them, Ellie stood, completely shrouded, a part of the night itself, her laughter a chilling melody that echoed through the clearing. "Help me, Mommy!" Rachel scrambled backward, terror flooding her veins. "No! No!" She realized it was not just Ellie they had to rescue, but perhaps themselves as well. "Rachel!" Max's soft voice broke through her haze. They had to run, but run where? Every direction felt trapped, infinite darkness swirling around them, and the overwhelming chaos of the forest fed off their fear. Could they truly escape this sinister embrace without losing everything? Just then, something in the shadows stirred, something alive and wicked. In that dark night, there was no turning back. They were not just running from shadows, they were running for their lives. But to where? Rachel's pulse raced as she shoved Max forward, urging him to follow her into the forest's otherworldly gloom.
The laughter, that dreadful sound, echoed cruelly around them, weaving a net of dread that ensnared any glimmer of hope. Each step seemed heavy with despair, the ground beneath their feet yielding like quicksand, pulling them toward unseen horrors. "Keep your eyes on me, Max," she urged, squeezing his hand. His small fingers felt fragile as they raced through the mist. Behind them, the shadows thickened, lurking like a great beast ready to pounce. Ellie's voice echoed again, twisting through the fog. "Mommy, help me!" The sound was layered with terror, morphing into a cackle that pierced through Rachel's resolve. She couldn't let that darkness drag her daughter further away. Suddenly, the fog thickened again, pressing in close enough for Rachel to feel its cold breath on her neck. She could barely see the path ahead, and every second felt like an eternity. But there had to be a way out. "This way!" she shouted, desperation fueling her instinct. The oppressive darkness seemed to bend to her will, parting slightly as if recognizing her determination. Just ahead, a glimmer of light flickered like a candle amid the shadows. Rachel dashed toward it. "Max, stay close." Max nodded, his little face pale, eyes wide and terrified. The light danced like hope, beckoning to them with a magnetic pull. As they approached, it widened into a circular clearing, the trees falling away in a neat arc, revealing an eerily calm glade. The laughter, though distant, still taunted them, but here it felt subdued, muffled by the stillness. Rachel stopped, panting, scanning the clearing for any sign of Ellie. "Can you see her?" she whispered to Max, frantically searching the shadows. He shook his head, and Rachel's heart sank deeper. The flickering light around them intensified for a moment, shining brighter than before. She stepped forward cautiously, half expecting the ground to swallow her whole. "Ellie!" If you can hear me, we're here. There was a moment of quiet, an unsettling silence that stretched dangerously. Then, from the depths of the shadows surrounding them, Ellie's form began to resolve. But she appeared different, darker, her eyes wide and glistening with an otherworldly sheen. "Mommy," Ellie's voice lilted softly, yet it carved through Rachel's heart like a knife. Rachel took a step back, dread pooling in her stomach. This wasn't her daughter. The light flickered once more, as if unsure, hesitant over which path to take, revealing glimpses of the haunting figures circling the edge of the clearing. They wrung their hands and moaned, tortured souls bound to the void that threatened to consume everything. "Don't listen to her," Rachel shouted, her voice rising above the hushed whispers and echoing laughter. "Ellie, you have to fight! Please!" The shadows twisted violently, pulling Ellie closer, wrapping around her like a dark shroud. "Why won't you stay? You belong here."
The forest hissed in a voice that was both seductive and cruel. Terror gripped Rachel's heart. "No! I won't let this happen!" She lunged toward her daughter, the connection between them sparking with fierce love. "Remember our song? We sing it together!" Desperate, she summoned every fragment of her courage, allowing the melody to fracture the suffocating silence. In that moment, Ellie hesitated, confusion flickering in her eyes. "Mommy!" But the shadows surged again, urging Ellie back. Rachel felt the ground shift beneath her. The very heartbeat of the forest drummed like a war cry, warning them both of the violence brewing. "Come back!" Rachel screamed, tears streaming down her cheeks, her heart pounding like a drum. "You're stronger than this!" Max tugged on Rachel's arm, whimpered, "Mommy, what if we can't save her?" "What if we can?" Rachel countered, desperation inked in each word. A fragment of hope glimmered in her chest. They had to try. The shadows pressed in, and the air thickened with the reek of despair, but Rachel summoned every ounce of bravery she had left. "Ellie, I love you, and I won't leave without you," she cried, feeling the wrath of the forest shift, as if it knew this was a pivotal moment. As the shadows howled in rage, an unexpected thunderclap erupted in the distance. The clearing lit up, the light brightening against the encroaching darkness. In that very flash, Rachel saw clarity on Ellie's face, a spark of recognition. "Mommy!" Ellie's voice was both distant and near. But then, something dark surged forward from within the woods, a mass of shadows that twisted and curled, launching toward them like a charged beast, ready to swallow everything whole. Rachel screamed as everything erupted into chaos, light dimming as terror lurked close, wanting them all. Would they be crushed under the weight of despair, or could they find salvation in the darkness? Before Rachel could think further, the shadows lunged, and in a heartbeat she lost sight of Ellie completely. "Max!" she shouted in fear, but then reality blurred, and the ground trembled again beneath her feet. What have they unleashed? Where would they land when everything finally came crashing down? Rachel felt an icy grip wrap around her heart as the shadows consumed the clearing. Panic surged within her, raw and urgent. Her breath came in short gasps, and Max clung to her side like a lifeline. "Stay close," she commanded, but the words barely left her mouth when the darkness exploded around them. A howl, deep and guttural, echoed from the depths of the forest, shaking the very ground beneath them. The brilliance of the light was extinguished, plunging them into a murky abyss. Rachel instinctively yanked Max toward her, back against the unseen wall of gloom, where the laughter now morphed into screams, her heart crammed with dread. "Ellie!" was all Rachel could manage, as hope twisted into despair. The name echoed, lost in the thundering chaos that engulfed them. With trembling hands, Rachel felt the pulsing connection to her daughter, a bond deeper than the shadows threatening to tear them apart. But as she strained her ears for any sign of Ellie, the darkness began to swirl, circling them like a predator ready to strike. Faint whispers slithered through the air, each one more haunted than the last. "Mommy, where are you?" The voice was so close, yet shrouded in a thick veil of darkness, tumbling between reality and a twisted dream. "Ellie!" Rachel cried again, her voice cracking under the weight of sheer terror. Suddenly, a form emerged from the depths, the flicker of a familiar silhouette. Hope flared anew within Rachel. "Ellie, is that you?" She started forward, reaching out into the all-consuming black. But as the figure stepped closer, familiar features warped and twisted. The dark shroud that hugged Ellie's body shifted, wrapping her in an unholy embrace. Why won't you join me? Ellie's face looked wrong, her voice a chorus of sweet and sinister. Rachel's heart sank. "This isn't you!" she shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. She could feel the forest closing in, the trees leaning in to hear this desperate plea, almost as if hungry for the emotional feast unfolding before them. "Come play with us." Ellie gestured toward the abyss swirling around her, and Rachel felt bile rise in her throat. "No! You have to fight it!" Rachel's instinct kicked in, and she bolted towards her daughter, Max stumbling hurriedly behind her. The ground quaked beneath their feet, each step like moving through quicksand. The air crackled with dark energy, pushing back against her, as if the forest itself sought to isolate them from hope. "Mommy, I'm scared!" Max whimpered, his grip tightening as shadows clawed at their feet. Rachel turned to him, fury and love mingling in her heart. "Hold on to me! We will not let this place take us!" With a sudden surge of strength, she lunged towards Ellie, the distance between them evaporating. But just as she reached out, Ellie's face shifted again, her eyes glinting maliciously. "You belong in the dark, Mommy, as do we all." The words hit like a cold blade, slicing through the grip of reason. The shadows writhed and reached towards Rachel, coiling around her arms and legs, dragging her toward the void. "Let her go! Let Ellie go!" Rachel screamed, struggling against the relentless pull. With a ferocious battle cry, Rachel summoned every ounce of love she had. "Ellie, remember the fairy tales? You promised you'd always fight for each other." Ellie paused, confusion flickering across her features. The otherworldly glow lessened, but the shadows tightened their grip, howling in rage. "You can't win," they whispered in unison, the dark tendrils wrapping tighter around Rachel, draining her strength. Max's cries erupted behind her, a small voice echoing her pain. "Mommy, don't leave me!"
Rachel locked eyes with Ellie. "You are stronger than them. Remember us." Just then, the very ground beneath them began to crack, splitting with a bone-chilling sound. Light surged from below, fighting its way through the dark like a desperate flicker in a storm. The whispers turned to wails, and panic blazed through the shadows as they clawed to maintain their grip. "Go!" Rachel screamed, feeling a pull, different now, as if the forest itself wanted to free them. But just as a glimmer of hope brightened the darkness, Ellie's eyes widened, caught between two worlds, and with a final surge, the shadows released their grip, sending Rachel and Max spiraling toward the unknown. As they fell, Rachel could feel Ellie's presence dimming. The darkness flared one last time. "Mommy!" And then, silence. What lay beneath, they had no idea. And would Ellie be lost forever in the depth of the void? Falling. The sensation jerked Rachel from the abyss, heart racing, mind swimming. She tumbled through a space where time stretched and shrank, the warmth of her daughter's love fading, replaced by a bone-chilling sensation that clawed at her insides. With a thud, they hit a damp ground that felt less like earth and more like the remains of something long forgotten. Max landed beside her, groaning and gasping, fear etched into every feature. "Mommy, where are we?" he stammered, his small voice swallowed by oppressive silence. Rachel pushed herself up, scanning the surroundings. This was not the forest anymore. They sat in a twisted hall of gnarled trees, but they twisted unnatural, bark like darkened veins, roots snaking into the earth like bony fingers. Strange luminescent fungi clung to shadows, casting a ghostly glow but doing nothing to chase away the encroaching dread. "Max," she grabbed his hand tight, "we need to find Ellie." The words barely left her mouth when the ground trembled again, vibrating beneath their weight, an echo of despair rising in the air. "Mommy, please." Max's voice was small. The earlier confidence had drained from him, replaced by pure terror. Rachel's heart broke. She needed to be strong for him, yet she felt the encroaching darkness weigh heavily on her. Suddenly static filled the air, a crackling hum that made Rachel's skin prickle. Startled, they turned towards the source, a grove that seemed to pulsate with malevolence. The trees quivered violently as an ancient whisper broke through the chaos, forming words drenched in hypnotic dread. "Come, play with us." "No!" Rachel snapped. "Stay back!" But the cold tug of the words coiled around her mind, beckoning, promising relief from fear. She choked it down, shaking her head fiercely. "We're leaving!" They darted into the thickening shadows, every instinct flaring with danger. The path twisted, branches clawing at them like frozen fingers trying to drag them back. The whispers grew louder, each syllable dripping with sadness, with anger. "Come to us, Ellie. Join us." What if it doesn't stop?
Max's voice trembled, nearly lost in the howling wind that carried the distant laughter, each peal twisted, echoing with sinister joy. "Shh, just keep moving," Rachel urged, lungs burning as they plunged deeper. She could feel the pull, an icy lesson in desperation making her queasy. But then, a flash of light, a flicker from an opening up ahead. "Mom!" a voice cried, a voice so similar yet markedly altered. Rachel's heart surged. "Ellie!" she yelled, breaking into a sprint. "No!" Max cried, grabbing her hand. "It's a trap!" Rachel hesitated, the urgency and terror battling within her. But the instinct to fight for her daughter stirred stronger. The light beckoned her, illuminating everything but the horizon. She pushed through, pulling Max along. But as they neared, the light fractured, splitting reality with jagged edges like broken glass. In an instant, Ellie stood before them, her form wavering, familiar yet transformed, eyes glowing in terrible satisfaction. "Mommy, why don't you join us?" she purred, voice thick with something they hadn't seen, something awfully seductive. A shiver coursed through Rachel, filling her veins with cold. "Ellie, no! Fight it!" she screamed, desperation clawing at her. But Ellie smiled, a wicked smile that twisted her innocence. "You were always meant to be with us. Join me, Mommy." Max whimpered, pressing against Rachel's leg. "I want to go home." "Me too," Rachel screamed against the encroaching darkness. "Fight it, Ellie. Remember the stories, please." But the shadows roiled, wrapping around Ellie's legs, stitching the fabric of reality. As the laughter rose again, shrill and haunting, a deafening roar erupted from the grove. Trees bent in anguish as if alive, battling an unseen terror. A horrific realization struck Rachel. The forest wanted, all of them, forever. The ground shook in warning. "You can't escape," echoed from the shadows, and as if in response, Ellie's mouth stretched wider, revealing teeth that glistened and gleamed, a mouth that screamed, "Join us!" Rachel's breath caught, terror skyrocketing as the tree limbs lashed violently. Max clung to her, eyes wide and filled with desperation. A pulsing darkness enveloped them again, thick and suffocating. They had to run, but where? "Mom?" Max's voice trembled. "Hold my hand," Rachel shouted, but as they turned to flee, the cry of the forest surrounded them, its twisting heart ready to draw them all into its ever-hungry maw. Just as they stepped forward, a low growl echoed, followed by an echoing silence, thick as fog. Whatever lay ahead would not let them pass without a cost. And then the shadows lunged. What would they find waiting in the darkness? Would they be the next to join Ellie? Rachel's heart hammered against her ribs, the urgency propelling her forward as they stumbled through the haze of fear. Ghostly voices encircled them, weaving in and out like thick smoke.
It was as if the trees themselves held their breath, waiting for something dire to unfold. "Run, Max! Just run!" Rachel yelled, gripping her son's hand tighter, her own fear battling against the instinct to protect. But the ground was a shifting nightmare beneath them, a jigsaw puzzle of shadows that felt alive. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig echoed ominously, sending shivers racing up Rachel's spine. Suddenly, the darkness erupted with a cascade of whispers, rising like a wave determined to swallow them whole. "Join us, forever." The words curled around them slick as oil, persuasive, draining the will from Rachel's limbs. She fought against it, determined to stay grounded in her motherly purpose. Behind them, the howling laughter of the unseen forces twisted through the air, taunting, mocking their every attempt to escape. Ellie's face loomed large in Rachel's mind, transformed and cruel, a specter that drilled into her butt with every heartbeat. "Don't give in," she urged herself. She squeezed Max's hand, felt his warmth faltering. "Stay close, we're going to make it." Just ahead, they stumbled onto a clearing, the light flickering like a dying ember. Rachel's breath hitched. In the center lay a dark altar, adorned with twisted roots and glowing fungi. It teemed with a hunger that vibrated through the air. The stench of decay rose up, wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. "Mommy, I don't like this." Max's voice quivered, tears streaking his cheeks. The fear in his eyes mirrored Rachel's heart, raw, palpable, and desperate. "We can't stop. We have to find a way." But the earth shuddered beneath them again, and the laughter swelled louder, a monstrous sound that devoured the sanity of the moment. Out of the shadows, figures emerged, dark, twisted forms resembling children, faces obscured but eyes glowing with unnatural light. They danced around the altar, chanting in harmony, their voices sweetened with malice. "Join us! Join us!" Rachel felt her blood run cold as the realization hit her. They weren't children. They were the very echoes of lost souls, spirits consumed by this wretched place. Each one shared the same tantalizing shine in their void-like eyes that Ellie had. "No," Rachel roared, summoning every ounce of bravery. "You will not take my son. You won't take Ellie." But the onslaught didn't cease. It crushed down on her like rocks. The figures drew closer, their translucent fingers reaching out, beckoning her toward the altar. Rachel felt the air grow thick, electric with the power of their collective despair. Everything within her screamed to escape, yet her limbs felt frozen, the whispers invading her thoughts. "Mommy, help me," Max sobbed, his small frame trembling beside her. She felt his grip slacken, a crushing wave of terror crashing through her. "No, Max, fight it. We can't give in." Rachel pulled him closer, the grotesque rhythm of the chant thrumming in her ears.
Each step forward felt like wading through molasses, the pull of the altar growing stronger. Max looked up, his face pale. "Mommy, I can't." With a sudden rush, the wind howled through the clearing, snatching away the ghostly figures. Max nearly lost his footing. Their momentary distraction was the opening Rachel needed. "Run!" she shouted, urging her son away from the chant, from the electric terror that hung in the air. They bolted. Bursting through the perimeter of the clearing, Rachel felt the atmosphere thicken, a force trying to pull them back like hands wrapping around their ankles. Rachel couldn't let up. She could sense something lurking just beyond her vision, a dark silhouette stalking them through the shadows. Max stumbled, and Rachel wrapped an arm around his waist, hoisting him up, pushing them forward blindly. "Allie!" she screamed into the thick night. "Where are you?" The darkness swallowed her words. Ahead, a glimmer caught her attention, an opening close to the thicket. Perhaps it was an escape. But deep within her, dread coiled tighter. What if it was just another trap? The wind picked up, grazing her skin with a chilling caress that whispered secrets only the shadows could understand. The laughter began again, wailing through the forest, pulling at her sanity. Rachel felt the weight of the forest on her shoulders, a palpable pressure. "We're going to make it," she whispered fiercely to Max, though doubt gnawed at the edges of her resolve. "We're not done." But as they neared the light, the forest pulsed with ominous intent. Would it lead them to safety, or was it a new path to Ellie's fate? A cold thought settled in Rachel's mind. The forest wasn't just seeking to claim them, it was after her daughter. As they lunged toward the light, the laughter crescendoed, mingling with a piercing scream that echoed off the trees, a scream that sounded too familiar. And then, in an instant, it was gone. Did Ellie cry for help, or was it yet another trick of the sinister woods? They reached the threshold. Would they step into salvation, or would the darkness reclaim them? The eerie glow grew brighter as Rachel and Max sprinted headlong into the clearing. The oppressive darkness pressed against their backs, a hungry beast waiting to devour them whole. The light, ethereal and shimmering, painted the trees in ghostly hues. They stumbled closer, Max's small feet stumbling on roots that seemed to claw at him, reluctant to let go. "Just a little more," Rachel urged, forcing her trembling legs to push faster. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to turn back. Was the soothing light a false promise? In that moment, the silence swelled, thick and choking. The laughter receded, yet an unsettling stillness took its place, as if the forest were holding its breath in anticipation. Max looked up at Rachel, his wide eyes filled with terror. "Mommy, I can't. The dark it's everywhere."
She felt his fear like a weight on her chest, a dark shadow loitering just out of sight. "I know, baby, but we can't stop. We need to reach the light." She could almost grasp hope, but it slipped through her fingers like sand. Then the earth trembled beneath them. A sharp crack rang out, and Rachel whipped her head around. The trees shuddered, their branches creaking ominously, as if whispering secrets of their own. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and thin, its skin a ghastly white, stretched tight over bones that jutted like jagged rocks. The eyes, hollow pits that drank in the light, locked onto Rachel with an insatiable hunger. "Join us." Its voice slithered through the air, a chilling echo that felt alive, warm like blood.
Rachel's gut twisted. It was like a dark magnet pulling her toward it, an irresistible force. The shadows danced around her son like moths to a flame. "Max, no!" she shouted, desperately pulling him back. In that instant, the light flickered, an invitation, comfort wrapped in deception. Max stumbled further, a sad whimper escaping his lips as he was pulled toward the glow. "Max!" Rachel screamed, her heart pounding, her sense of time unspooling as if the world warped around her. "Don't go toward it!" The entity recoiled slightly, its attention divided, and Rachel seized the chance. "Max, grab my hand!" She lunged forward, wrapping her fingers around his wrist, gripping hard. The darkness seemed to lash out, tendrils of smoke curling around her ankles, but she fought against it, pulling him back. But the whispers grew louder, weaving a tapestry of doubt and fear, enticing her son. "Come play. You'll never be alone. We can keep you safe." "No!" she snarled, the anger surging through her veins. She felt the warmth of Max slip against her grip, the forest grip tightening as it threatened to steal him away. "Mommy, I'm scared." His voice trembled. "I know, honey. I'm here." She was struggling now, the weight of despair threatening to drown her. "I won't let go. We have to be brave." With a surge of adrenaline, Rachel dragged Max toward the encroaching light. Every instinct told her to recoil, yet she couldn't abandon the glimmer of hope shimmering in the distance. They stumbled forward, through the pulling darkness, each step feeling heavier as the air crackled with tension. Just as they reached the boundary of the light, a piercing scream crescendoed, echoing through the trees. A scream that twisted like a knife in Rachel's gut. It belonged to Ellie. No, it was an instinctive cry, echoing her deepest fear. The light dimmed momentarily, and in that flicker, the twisted figure reared closer, a sharp smile spreading across its gaunt face. Rachel's breath caught, panic rising. "Ellie, we're coming," she shouted, voice trembling. The figure lingered in the light shadow, waiting, patient, hungry for the moment they faltered.
As they stood at the edge, faced with the sinister figure and the enveloping darkness, Rachel realized the truth. It was not just an escape, it was a decision laden with dread. Would they find Ellie, or would they plunge deeper into the forest's malignant heart? And then, from the depths, another voice, faint but clear, echoed through the chaos. "Mommy?" Before Rachel could respond, the figure lunged. Max gasped. Rachel's heart took flight. She had to act, but what if stepping forward was a step to doom? What awaited them in this fleeting moment, teetering at the edge of the light, clinging to the hope of finding Ellie before a true nightmare enveloped them? Rachel's hands shook as she steadied Max, staring into the glowing light that felt like salvation, but also a trap. Ellie's voice wafted through the darkness, threading through the numbing fear. "Mommy, I need you." It was both a call for help and an invitation, and the contrasting emotions pulled at Rachel's heart. "Hold on to me," she urged, pulling Max closer, feeling the heat of his small body against hers. "We are not giving up on Ellie. We are going to save her." Clenching her teeth against a swell of panic, Rachel pressed forward. The chilling presence of the figure loomed still, its hollow eyes wide with hunger. The taunting whispers filled the air, slithering deeper into her mind. "Join us, forever." The voice wrapped around her like a suffocating shroud. Ellie's voice echoed once more in the distance, drawing Rachel's resolve with power and vengeance. "You will not take my daughter," she shouted, pushing against the shadows that snaked like dark tendrils trying to bind them. "Max, I need you to believe in me." "I believe, Mommy, I believe." He gripped her hand tighter, and as Rachel surged toward the light, she felt a fierce connection pulsing between them, a bond that defied the creeping despair. Yet as they approached the light, the shadows stirred, warping the very air around them. They lunged, dark forms reaching out with claw-like hands, desperate to pull them back into the depths. "You cannot escape," the figure hissed, its voice resonating through the glade, vibrating with malicious delight. "Don't listen," Rachel screamed, blocking out the fear that clawed at her. "We have to keep moving." She and Max broke through the threshold between darkness and light, the moment electric, the air thickening with unspeakable tension. In a heartbeat, the clearing erupted, shadows roaring and writhing around them, as if alive. "Ellie!" Rachel shouted again, desperation flat against the chaos. Then the shadows parted, revealing a flicker of white amidst the gloom, the unmistakable shape of her daughter. "Mommy, I'm here!" Ellie's face flickered in and out of the light, caught in the grips of the spirit's laughter.
The twisted figure pulsed with strength behind them, ready to consume. "Ellie, come here!" Rachel reached out as Ellie took a hesitant step forward.
With every ounce of her being, she could feel the connection between them, a spark amidst the shadows, igniting hope in her heart. "Fight it, baby! Remember who you are!" The shadows flickered, their grip momentarily loosening around Ellie, confusion flashing in her eyes. "Mommy, I'm scared." "Stay with me," Rachel urged, her heart pounding, adrenaline surging. There was no turning back now. With a final surge, Rachel moved into the light, pulling Max with her. "We won't let you go," she cried, the determination tearing through the niggling doubt. As they rushed toward Ellie, the shadows tightened, dark tendrils clawing at her ankles, threatening to drag her down. "You must choose," the figure taunted, the laughter of forgotten souls echoing, nearly drowning Rachel's voice out. "No! You don't get to decide our fate," she shouted, fear morphing into a blazing resolve. "Ellie, come! I love you! Remember our stories! Remember how strong you are!" Ellie hesitated, her eyes wide, caught in the midst of a storm that raged around them. The figure recoiled slightly, frustration tightening its expression. Suddenly, the world split. Light poured through, flooding the clearing with warmth, washing away some of the shadow's power. "I have you!" Rachel screamed, taking another step toward her daughter, but the shadows snarled, fighting back against the light, clawing for Rachel's resolve. "Come back to the darkness," they hissed. "You belong to us." With a final burst of strength, Rachel lunged for Ellie, intertwining their hands. "Together!" she roared, as Max squeezed her other hand. The moment solidified, they were united against the darkness. It felt electric, a jolt infusing her limbs as the shadows recoiled, screeching. "No! You cannot escape!" they cried, but Rachel pressed on, her heart pounding wildly, guiding her children, her family, toward the light. Colors exploded around them, a brilliant pulse that shattered the night's grasp. Rachel could feel the warmth sucking the darkness away, cleansing it from every corner, leaving a wash of safety that felt surreal. "Mommy!" Ellie cried, but there was light in her voice, clarity breaking through. "I'm right here," Rachel replied, voice resolute, and with that, they surged into the opening, the shadowy figure launching itself desperately at them, fingers outstretched. Then they burst through, a cacophony of light enveloping them in a vibrant embrace of safety. For a heart-stopping moment, everything stands still. Their feet hit the ground, the solid earth beneath them felt alive with hope. Rachel gasped, horror fading, replaced by relief as she tightened her grip. Stumbling backward, they emerged from the grips of the forest, the whispers dissipating into a memory, chased away by the morning sun. They all hit the grass, panting hard, alive. Ellie clung to Rachel. "I thought you left." "Never," Rachel whispered, tears of joy spilling down her cheeks. They were free. They had survived the darkness. Beside them, Max staggered, eyes wide with confusion but alive, safe, family intact. They breathed in the crisp air, untainted by the shadows that dared threaten their bond. Behind them, in the twisted depths of the whispering pines, the figure dissolved into shadow, the forest settling into silence. The memories of that dark night lingered, but they were alive, together. The family had fought against the darkness, and together they emerged, stepping firmly into the sunlight. They had faced their nightmares, and for now they were safe. "Let's go home," Rachel said softly, wrapping her arms around both children. With the sun shining down, warmth washing over them, they turned away from the whispering pines, daring not to look back, ready to embrace the light of tomorrow. And with that moment, Rachel vowed to never let fear dictate her life again. It was a new day. Their story was theirs to write, together. Now that you've experienced this gripping conclusion, you have to take action. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, because every click helps rise these stories to the top. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about this intense finale. Let your voices be heard. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion. Your support is crucial to help keep the storytelling alive.